Good morning, this is World News on TVP World. I'm Anna Kalczyńska. A full and unconditional ceasefire is now on the table, said Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. He urged Russia to respond ahead of a high-stakes meeting set for May 15th in Turkey, where he hopes to meet President Putin face-to-face. This comes in response to Russia's proposal for direct negotiations to be held in Istanbul next week.
Tomorrow, we expect a ceasefire. This proposal is on the table. A full and unconditional ceasefire, long enough to provide the necessary basis for diplomacy, can bring peace much closer. Ukraine has been proposing this for a long time, and our partners have been proposing it. The whole world is talking about it. We expect a clear answer from Russia. Russia will still have to end the war. The killing must end. The Ukrainian forces will be ready to respond in a mirror image. To make it fair, we have repeatedly heard from our partners that they're ready to increase sanctions against Russia if Putin refuses to cease fire. We will see. And we in Ukraine have no problem negotiating. We are ready for any format. I will be in Turkey this Thursday, May 15th, and I am waiting for Putin in Turkey. Personally, and I hope that this time Putin will not look for reasons why he cannot do something.
Я буду в цей четвер, 15 травня, в Туреччині.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says he will be waiting for Vladimir Putin in Turkey on Thursday. In a post on social media, he also said the Ukrainians are expecting a full and lasting ceasefire starting off tomorrow. Our Ukrainian correspondent, Katerji, has more.
That push by European leaders, those four leaders of Germany, France, Poland and Britain, coming to Kyiv and issuing Putin with that ultimatum for an immediate 30-day ceasefire to begin on Monday, an unconditional ceasefire. Now, following on from that, Putin issued a rare late-night address where he didn't respond to the call for a ceasefire, instead putting forward the proposal that Zelenskyy and, the Ukrainians and the Russians will begin direct talks in Istanbul on May the 15th. Let's take a listen to part of that address given by the Russian president.
We are committed to serious negotiations with Ukraine. The meaning of the talks is to eliminate the root causes of the conflict and to establish a long-term, lasting peace. For a historical perspective, we do not rule out that over the course of these negotiations it will be possible to agree on some new ceasefire, a real ceasefire, that would be observed not only by Russia, but by the Ukrainian side as well.
So, to be clear, that is a rejection from the Russians of this idea of having a ceasefire, whereas the Ukrainians and the Europeans very firmly do want that. And the Americans are also seeing it as a rejection. US President Donald Trump has tweeted, President Putin of Russia doesn't want to have a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine, but rather wants to meet on Thursday in Turkey to negotiate a possible end to the bloodbath. Ukraine should agree to this immediately. Now, from Kyiv's part, they have stressed that they are expecting an unconditional ceasefire to begin on Monday, but they have also agreed in principle to holding those talks in Istanbul on Thursday. President Zelenskyy has issued a statement.
We await a full and lasting ceasefire starting from tomorrow to provide the necessary basis for diplomacy. There's no point in prolonging the killings, and I'll be waiting for Putin in Turkey on Thursday. Personally, I hope that this time the Russians will not look for excuses.
So while they are moving to having talks on Thursday, the big question still is what happens on Monday if Russia continues to fire? Will the European leaders follow through on their threat for further sanctions against Russia, or will this just be kicked into the grass to see what happens on Thursday in these talks in Istanbul? Now, it's important to remember that Russia's maximalist positions that they were arguing for before the full-scale invasion in February 2022, Russia hasn't moved back from any of these negotiating points as they would see them. So having negotiations, further discussions between Kyiv and Moscow doesn't really get the two sides anywhere if Russia is still holding on to these maximalist positions, which includes the demilitarization of Ukraine. That's what those agreements were in Istanbul at the start of the war. The question is, will they mirror those same agreements, those same negotiating points? Will the Russians start to concede? And if they don't, will there be further pressure ramped up by Washington and the European Union?
Ahead of the meeting in Istanbul, US President Donald Trump said he is starting to doubt that Ukraine will reach a deal with Russia. Posting on his own social media platform, Trump went on to urge Kyiv to meet Russian officials in Turkey on Thursday.
President Putin of Russia doesn't want to have a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine, but rather wants to meet on Thursday in Turkey to negotiate a possible end to the bloodbath. Ukraine should agree to this immediately. At least they will be able to determine whether or not a deal is possible. And if it is not, European leaders and the US will know where everything stands and can proceed accordingly. I'm starting to doubt that Ukraine will make a deal with Putin, who's too busy celebrating the victory of World War II, which could not have been won, not even close, without the United States of America. Have the meeting now.
According to the UK Foreign Office, the country will unveil a new sanctions package against Russia on Monday. The announcement comes after Russia had rejected a 30-day ceasefire that UK, France, Germany, Poland and Ukraine demanded during a recent visit to Kyiv. The statement from the Foreign Office says that sanctions will only target entities supporting the Russian invasion, but more information will be unveiled during today's Weimar's Plus group meeting. While visiting Ukraine, the ministers of the 5 countries in the group agreed that if Russia refuses a full ceasefire, stronger sanctions will be applied on the banking and energy sectors. The new measures will target fossil fuels, oil and the infamous shadow fleet. Russian secret services were behind a massive fire that destroyed a Warsaw shopping center a year ago, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said on Sunday. Poland has been a target of sabotage actions, which officials said have been part of hybrid war being waged by Russia to destabilize the functioning of countries that support Ukraine, involving tactics like arson or cyber attacks.
This was the scene in the early morning in Warsaw exactly 1 year ago. A fire entirely engulfed the city's largest shopping center, taking 1,400 shops and service outlets with it. Arson was found to be the cause of the fire, and now, after an almost year-long investigation, we finally know who did it. This was a post made by Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk on Sunday.
We now know for sure that the large fire on Marywilska Street was the result of arson by Russian services. The actions were coordinated by a person residing in Russia. Some of the perpetrators are already in custody. The rest have been identified and are being sought. We will get them all.
Justice Minister Adam Bodnar and Interior Minister Tomasz Siemoniak confirmed that the fire was indeed an arson attack ordered by Russian intelligence. Authorities say they've detailed knowledge of how the attack was planned, executed, and documented by those involved. Polish services are cooperating with the Lithuanian side, where some of the perpetrators also carried out sabotage activities.
The Albanians voted in parliamentary elections on Sunday, with Prime Minister Edi Rama seeking his 4th term in office. While polling stations closed at 7 p.m. last evening, the official results will be announced on Tuesday. Edi Rama has spent the last week campaigning on his promise to join the European Union by the end of the decade. His task is not easy, as Rama has been under increased scrutiny over a series of scandals. These include the arrest of his ally and mayor of Tirana, Erion Veliaj, on allegation of corruption and money laundering. A According to the first exit polls, however, Edi Rama's Socialist Party of Albania managed to get over 51% of the vote, which translates to 79 seats in a 140-seat parliament. The main opponent, Sali Berisha's Democratic Party, took second place with 38% of the votes, with 54 seats. These results are only based on exit polls, and the public will have to wait another day for the official numbers. Tens of thousands of people took to the streets across Germany on Sunday in a coordinated wave of protests against the Alternative for German Party. Demonstrations spanned more than 60 cities, with organizers calling for an end to right-wing extremism and an outright ban on the far-right AfD party.
Demonstrations spanned more than 60 cities, with organizers calling for an end to right-wing extremism and an outright ban on the far-right AfD party. From Berlin and Dresden to Munich and Nuremberg, demonstrators rallied under the banners of Together Against the Right and Defend Human Dignity, Ban the AfD Now, urging lawmakers to initiate legal proceedings to outlaw the party entirely. The right-wing populist Alternative for Germany AfD party, which came a close second in recent federal elections, was labeled a suspected extremist movement just days ago by Germany's domestic intelligence service. A full designation and ban is now tied up in court, following pushback from the party and following the recent political transition in Berlin. Now, while the SPD supports such a ban, the ruling Christian Democrats remain divided, with Chancellor Friedrich Merz and his newly appointed Minister of Interior, Alexander Dobrindt, favoring a political, not legal approach to countering the far-right's rise. There are growing concerns that imposing an outright ban on the AfD could prove counterproductive, potentially inflaming rather than quelling the forces of extremism.
Dozens of boxes containing Nazi documents have been found in Argentina during the relocation of the country's Supreme Court archives. The boxes were sent from the German embassy in Japan during World War II for unknown reasons, potentially putting into doubt Argentina's claims of neutrality during the war. The found boxes contain postcards, photographs, and propaganda material from the Nazi regime, as well as thousands of notebooks belonging to the Nazi Party. While Argentina was neutral during the war, it was led by fascist strongmen during the second half of the conflict who held sympathies for the Nazi Germany. The found records, however, were stored in Argentina in 1941, 2 years before the military seized control of the country. It was also well before the so-called rat lines were used by Nazis to flee Germany to the South American country, where they lived under hidden identities and were protected by Argentina authorities under Juan Perón. The documents are now under investigation. Every summer, Łazienki Park becomes a prestigious stage for the world's most outstanding piano players. On Sunday in Warsaw, despite cloudy weather, crowds flocked to the park for the opening of the Chopin season.
A staple of summer in Warsaw.
We're opening the 66th season of Chopin concerts in Łazienki Park.
From May until September, people gather here every Sunday to enjoy the world's top pianists performing Chopin in Warsaw's most picturesque park, under an impressive statue of the famous composer. On opening Sunday, Bulgarian pianist Ludmil Angelov gave a melancholic performance of Chopin's greatest hits.
Having these concerts really gives some atmosphere, some vibe to the Warsaw.
The music was better when the sun was warm, but it's been a wonderful experience. A beautiful park.
Splendid. Excellent.
For some pianists, it will be a chance to practice ahead of this year's International Chopin Piano Competition. Others are already laureates, and it's extremely rare to catch their live performances for free.
And that's all in this edition of World News, but please stay tuned to TVP World for more information and commentaries.